welcome along to another interview from the Honest Football Podcast. It's that time again, and this week we're interviewing another former pro. That man's Dean Bowditch, a man who started as a young star at Ipswich, making his debut in a local derby at 16, setting a record for being the youngest ever player to score a hat-trick for the club, a record that still stands to this day, and in an illustrious career at a number of EFL clubs, most notably after Yeovil Town, MK Dons, where he spent a number of years, and then Northampton and Stevenage towards the end. We talk about a number of Dean's experiences within the game and the decision-making process in transfers in particular, different stages of your career, different factors that come into that decision-making process. We also talk about playing with a young Dele Alli at MK Dons and differing opinions on him, as well as playing alongside some of his childhood heroes at Ipswich and many other fantastic memories. We can't thank Dean enough for joining us. If you do enjoy the interview, please put a thumbs up on the video. Let us know down in the comments any thoughts you have on Dean's career. And subscribe to the channel for regular content from the Honest Football Podcast, including new interviews with a footballing personality every single week. But thanks again to Dean for joining us, and I really hope you enjoy this one. Okay, and I'm delighted to be joined by Dean now, and I'll start as I do with every guest that we have on by taking you all the way back to your first footballing memories as a child, whether it be playing, watching on the TV at a stadium. What's the first thing you ever remember from football?
First thing ever was probably watching my brother. My brother was, well, he still is, two or 3 years older than me. And just standing on the sidelines as like a 4 or 5 year old watching him play. And, you know, he was actually very good as a kid. So he just used to run rings around people. So just watching my brother, just watching my brother really, just thinking, wow, like, you know, I want to emulate that.
And then what about for yourself, watching on TV as a fan? What's the first thing you remember from the professional game?
From the professional game? So probably Michael Owen. That's all I really need to say. That's all I need to say, really. Michael Owen in the World Cup. Yeah. You know, watching him, he was my idol. Him and Teddy Sheringham as a kid was my idol, and sort of Michael Owen just ripping it up. I'm just thinking, wow, like this kid is just incredible. I
think people with his injuries after, I forget just how good he was back then. It was ridiculous, that World Cup, wasn't it?
Watching everyone sort of looks at him and thinks, you know, he just think what he could have done, you know, what he could have been one of the all-time greats. But you know, when that spell he had where he was just no one could stop him. He was incredible.
And then what about for yourself, the first memories of playing? Doesn't have to be competitive, whether it's on the streets, in the parks. What are the first things you remember playing the game?
Again, like when I used to watch my brother, really, it's kind of, I got to an age where I kept on bugging, basically my dad. My dad used to look after the teams that we played for. And I'd keep saying to my dad and this other guy who was like the other coach, and he was just saying, like, oh, can I play? Can I play? Can I play? And they just said, look, you're 5. You can't play. Do you know what I mean? You're not old enough. And then they just said they had another team where like 6-year-olds started playing at like, you know, at the weekend and stuff. Yeah. And they just said, when you're 6, you can start playing. And literally, like on my 6th birthday, I was like, you know, can I play this weekend? Can I play? And they just had to, and then I just used to bug the hell out of them. So yeah, playing sort of, and not really knowing what to do, just literally just running like you do as a 6-year-old. You just run around after the ball, and there's like a mass of kids around one ball. You know, that's what I remember. Just the desperation to try and play.
And then I guess moving on from that, talk about how you got from there to in an academy at a professional football club, because there's been a few different tales of this depending on the generation. So I'm quite interested in yours.
What I'm trying to say. So basically, I played locally, and then there was at the time it was Ipswich Town had a school of excellence. Yeah. They had different kind of stations, not so far from sort of Ipswich as like their base. Yeah. And the closest one we had was at Brentwood, and I was playing for a local team, and then one of their coaches came up to my mum and dad and just said, you know, would he like to come along and train at our school of excellence? And we was only about 20 minutes down the road, so we weren't that far, and we were just like, yeah, sure. And then within about 6 months of it being a school of excellence, it transferred into an academy. Yeah. So I was already just in the system, and so they just said to groups from all the different school of excellence, I suppose the ones that they felt had a chance, and just said, you know, you can now be our academy. And then that was it. It just went from being the first point of academy and then just went through the ranks that way.
And then moving on, I think you're probably quite unique in a sense, and I guess it alludes back to Michael Owen as well, which was picked up very early, talent spotted very early, and getting the chance to become a professional and playing in the first team very early, because you made your debut at 16. I mean, we'll talk about the game itself in a bit because it was a unique one itself. But
Yeah.
talk to me about getting the opportunity at 16. Was it something you saw coming? Were there signs, or was it just completely out of the blue?
Completely out of the blue. And when you look back, I was far too young, really far too young. I look at 16-year-olds now, and I mean, my little brother's 11 years younger than me, and when he turned 16, I used to look at him and think, wow, like how was I playing men's football
Yeah,
at that age? It's just incredible. So I was far too young, but no, there was no signs of it really. It was just I was doing well in the academy. I was playing up a couple of age groups and scoring a few goals, and then just out of nowhere, they had some injuries, and some of the kids that are older than me were doing exams, funny enough. So they didn't want to take them away from their exams, and they just said the next one down, who was doing okay, was me. So they just said, come along and train. And so yeah, completely out of the blue. But I was far too young, far too young.
and I guess because you're a fairly modern footballer, another one where we need to compare the academies is we like to ask how many of the dirty jobs did you still have to do in terms of cleaning the boots and all of that? Were you still part of that generation?
I was very lucky in the fact that because I used to do it, so we
Yeah,
used to have to do like clean the bottles, wash like collect the balls, wash the boots, and all that, and clean
yeah,
the change rooms, and that was just part and parcel, and you just accepted it and made, because if you mucked up, you'd be out running, and that was the thing, there was no, oh, it's all right, we'll clean it tomorrow, you done it, or you ran.
yeah.
And I was just really lucky because I got my chance sort of playing at 16, or getting my debut at 16. But then I was sort of part of the first team from 17. So that kind of initial bit, I did it for the first year, and then after that I was part of the first team. So it kind of, I had my mate cleaning my boots.
Which I'm sure they enjoyed more than you.
Oh, I bet they loved it.
But I guess we'll talk about your debut a bit more because I know you mentioned it being a bit early at 16, but it wasn't any game really, was it? You were thrown in probably in the deep end. So talk to me about the experience of it, the atmosphere of it, playing in a local derby in your first game.
Yeah, like I said, it was out of the blue, and then because I'd come through the academy, I knew the importance of,
Yeah,
the derby. And, we used to have some feisty derbies as like a 14, 13, 14, 15-year-old. So I could only imagine what it was like at first team level. And I trained the week before, and even that was enough for me, just training with like Jim Magilton, and
yeah,
people like, it was kind of an amazing kind of experience. Just I could have just left from that. And then I was in the squad, and um, we travelled up on a day, and we went to a hotel first for pre-match and stuff like that. And that again, it's all like a learning curve, like
yeah.
going to food, and like you're sitting around the table, and you hear some of the conversation. I wasn't really saying a lot. I was just sitting there, just thinking, what's going on? This is incredible. And then the bit for me that made me realise how important this game was on the way to the game. As we left the hotel, there was about 4 police bikes around the bus, and they obviously police escorted us to the stadium,
Yeah.
and we were getting so much abuse, like from about a mile away, from like Norwich fans just throwing stuff at the bus, and like it was, and I was just sitting there, and all the other lads were kind of loving it. They were just like, really rolled up and going,
Yeah.
"Come on, do these boys," like, and this, that, and the other. And then yeah, you kind of, it's a bit of a blur, and you kind of don't really remember too much of it, but yeah, it was just an amazing experience, and like you said, kind of thrown into the deep end.
And then moving on to the sort of next year for you, because as you mentioned, you were one of those who was highly rated very early on, and you were featuring in the first team squad and a main part of it at 17 years of age. And the next season, you put your way into the history books, being the youngest player to get a hat trick for the club against Watford. Tell me about that experience as a Luton fan. It was a nice one for me, but go on.
Well, like, you think like making your debut against Norwich, you don't really think you could top it, and
No.
then literally however many months later, I was part of the first team and was enjoying it more than anything. I didn't have any expectations. I was just part and parcel of it, and was learning my trade and this, that, and the other. And then I got my chance the week before with up front with Darren Bent, and he scored a hat trick. And we obviously worked really well together, and I think I might have set one up, and it looked pretty good. So then the next game was obviously live on Sky at home to Watford, and I got, obviously the team sheet came out. Well, not the team sheet, the day before he named the team, and I was starting again. I was thinking, I'm live on Sky. This is, this is incredible. And then, what happened next was just, again, I can't really remember too much about it. I just remember obviously just being a kid running around like a lunatic, and then, obviously being very fortunate with the goals. I mean, apart from the second one, the other two, I mean, obviously you got to be there to score them, but there were tap-ins. But just an incredible experience, picking that ball up at the end and giving it a big kiss and thinking, actually, I think to this day it still stands, doesn't it, as the youngest hat-trick scorer. And it's incredible, really. I can't really say too much about it because it's just such a blur.
And I guess you picked up on something there, which I wanted to mention, because 2 or 3 guests in a row have said this now, talking about finding out as a young player that a game's live on Sky. So now, to us, we wouldn't think that'd be a huge thing to a footballer, because obviously we see hundreds of games a season. But for you as an EFL footballer, how special is that when you get that for the first time?
Yeah, I think, and back then, your TV rights, and they're showing every game, any game, and you can live stream games and this, that, and the other. So people can access games, all the time. But when social media wasn't around or anything like that, and then suddenly your game's going to be live on Sky, it was like that gave you like an extra buzz going into the game, and to then be starting and to then score a hat trick. And I still get people today, like if I meet them for the first time and they sort of know roughly about that I've played football and that, and they go, actually, I think I remember it was like however many years ago it was, like 15 years ago, when you scored a hat trick, didn't you, in Sky? And I went, so people still remember it, and I just think like it must have been pretty good if they remember it. Do you know what I mean?
Can't be a bad thing. I guess moving on to the next season is probably where we start to have a few of the negatives, because I guess as a young player you started to get quite affected by injuries, and that's something I'm really interested to get involved in. We've obviously suffered them at a lower level, but for yourself, when you feel like you're making that big stride into the first team, how frustrating is it, and where's the temptation go? Do you think about other things, or are you just determined to come back straight away?
I think injuries have been kind of a big part of my career, but I still managed to rack up a load of games and score quite a few goals. So it's kind of, I do wonder, like, if I hadn't have had these injuries, I would have gone on to maybe make 600-700 appearances. But it's part and parcel, and unfortunately some players physiques are made to play football and some aren't. And I believe that my body's kind of like, I've had to really work hard to keep my body in shape to be able to perform at a professional level. Whereas some players, like, they don't do a lot. They play, like my mate at MK, Dean Lewington's played like 2,000 games or whatever it is. And he does work hard, but I mean, his body's built for football. And I just think at that age, when you're getting injuries, and you have that kind of fire to say, no, I'm going to come back stronger. And I think it's later on in your career when you get injuries, it starts to really play on your mind.
And I guess as part of that, you then ended up having quite a lot of loan spells. And I'm interested in this as a young player, because there's the 2 schools which are staying in the academy until 23, 24, or there's the going out and having 6 or 7 different loan spells. Which one do you think is more suitable? And did you find the loans beneficial for you developing?
Yeah, I mean, I was always one that I need to play. So I was really grateful for having the opportunity at such a young age. But like I said, I was probably too young to have that opportunity. So then I built up a bit of a name for myself, thinking, I can't just sit in the reserves. I can't do that. I need to go out and play against, play in a game where it means something, 3 points, like fighting for survival or fighting for promotion. It's kind of, I need that. And I've had that for my career. So, even from like 18, 19, when I wasn't really playing, I'd knock on the door, and I wouldn't be disrespectful or anything like that. It would just be a conversation and just say, am I going to be playing? What do I need to do to play it? But if I'm not going to be, I want to go and play football. And that was just every time I had the opportunity to go out on loan, I just said, yeah, I want to go. I want to go and play. And to be fair, the loans were really beneficial because it just taught me a bit more about what, the men's game, and getting stuck in and learning about winning games.
And out of those loan spells as a youngster, I know this might cause controversy, but which one was your favourite if you had to pick one out of those? Most beneficial for you, I guess.
Most beneficial? Probably, I mean, Brighton, I tell you, well, I say I went to Burnley. I went to Burnley for a bit. And the reason why I'm going to say Burnley is because it was my first loan spell, and I was the youngest. I remember sitting down with my parents and speaking with my agent and saying, I want to go on loan, blah, blah, blah. Well, Burnley have showed interest. And the first thing I thought was, my God, that's miles away. But as a kid, I suddenly sort of had this kind of thing of, I want to be outside my comfort zone. I can't just be like, just be wrapped up in cotton wool. So I just went, yeah, let's do it. And so I hardly saw my family, hardly saw my girlfriend or anything like that. And I just had full focus on football. So probably that one really, because it just took me out of my comfort zone.
That's a really good thing you mentioned, actually, because it's probably a contrast to later in your career and for many footballers to the latter stages of their career in terms of the thought process behind moves. Yeah. So we'll talk about that a bit more because that'll be interesting. But I want to move on to your next permanent spell, which was then at Yeovil. So talk to me about the process of being released from Ipswich, whether it was something you were expecting, whether it was out of the blue again, or did you sort of see it coming with the injuries and the loan spells out?
I didn't see it because of that. I saw it because Roy Keane came in.
Even easier then.
Yeah. So no, it's perfectly honest. Like I've been there for a long time. I felt like I was starting to become like the paintwork of the building, and I needed a bit of a fresh start. And to be fair, it was the best thing that could have happened was someone like Roy Keane coming in and almost just having that conversation and saying, "Look, you're not part of my plans. You need a fresh start." So they didn't ask for any money for me because I was still at an age and this, that, and the other. And they just said, look, we'll let you go and start your career again, go and play some games. And I wish you all the best. And that was pretty much it. And then in that summer, being out of contract for the first time, it kind of, it was worrying, but I was very lucky that I'd kind of played enough games at Ipswich and made a bit of a name for myself that there was a few clubs interested. But I wanted to stay as high as I could, and even though I had like quite a few League Two clubs come in and say to me, we'll take you, Yeovil was the only one really from League One that sort of said, we'll take you, and I just said let's go for it, and I'm so glad I did, because being down there again, away from like out of your comfort zone, you got to really focus on football, but because it was because the budget was tight and it was like a family-run football club, like it was kind of really close knit. If you were fit, you played. Do you know what I mean? So I just made sure that I kept as fit as possible, and I played a load of games and scored a good amount of goals, and then that's kind of what kick-started my career again.
Does it come into your thought process when you're moving to a club, whether they've got the budget to have a big squad, whether if there's only going to be 18 or 20 in the squad that you've got more of a chance? Does that feature in your decision-making process?
Yeah, I think it features differently as you go through your career. So at that point, they literally said to me, we just want to like come in first for a week. We just want to make sure like, you can run around, which was fine. Yeah. And then I signed, but they did say, look, just to let you know, we've got a small squad, so you're going to get loads of game time.
Yeah.
And it's your chance. It's your chance to go and shine. You've got to just do it as often as you can. And I had some really good games and I had some poor games, but because you knew you was going to play the next week, you kind of knew you was always going to have that chance to redeem yourself rather than being sat on the bench. So it's kind of. No, I absolutely loved it down there because I just got that opportunity.
And obviously in your spell there, the first season you were top scorer for the club. What did you enjoy most about the spell? How did you feel at Yeovil?
My first season, I kind of went there off the back of, because I made a load of sub appearances at Ipswich and I scored I think it was 8 or 9 goals. It made my ratio look terrible. So actually for someone taking that chance on a striker, it's a bit like, well, his goal ratio ain't the best.
Yeah.
So I went there and I kind of, thought, well, I've got a bit of freedom. They let me off the leash a little bit. I started playing sort of different positions. I played out on the left. I played up front. I played in number 10, and sort of suddenly realised that actually in that team I was better off actually playing through the middle.
Yeah.
And the way it worked was like, even though I'm not the biggest and strongest, it just worked that I would pop up in the box at the right time and score a few goals. And I ended up over my course, of all the games there, I was 1 in 3. So that went suddenly from having a ratio of being not great to a ratio of like, hang on a minute, he can score a few goals. So yeah, I can't really complain. I thoroughly enjoyed it down there.
And then it led to a move that probably shaped the majority of the rest of your career, really, because you went to a club that probably divides opinion a bit in MK Dons, mainly just because it's a modern club and who they took the place in the league from. But
Yeah.
what was the move like, the thought process? Obviously, you're coming a lot closer to home again then. But I get one of the things that interested me most about that is then you quite immediately, you mentioned it there, changed to mainly playing from a wide position in that team. What
Yeah.
was the thought process behind that, and what were the conversations like? Because that's something that always interests me about a player changing position mid-career.
Yeah, I think because I'd always really played up front. And then I had played on one of my many loan spells. I came across John Gorman at Wickham.
Yeah.
And he was at the time, he was assistant manager to Carl Robinson at MK. And I got the phone call and he said, would you come here to MK? And I played there a couple of times with Yeovil, and like fantastic stadium, and they were sort of higher up the league and pushing for promotion and stuff like that. And I kind of chopped his hand off and said, I'll be over there. And I sat down with John and I sat down with Carl, and Carl kind of gave me a little brief overview of the way they play and what formations and where he sees me play. And I think the way that I suddenly sort of started to change my position was because he said to me, we play 4-2-3-1, and I see you playing in any of the 4 positions up top.
Yeah.
So I was like, right, okay. He said, because the way that I play, I'm not like an out and out striker.
Oh.
I'm not a winger that gets to the byline, gets crosses in. I'm not this kind of box to box number 10. I'm just this guy that kind of pops up in areas that people don't really like going. And so they said to me, I can see you playing anywhere really. And that just attracted me so much. I was just like, because it made me think, actually, I must be quite good at something if you think I can play in all 4 different positions.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then that was it. And then before you knew it, I kind of made the left side my kind of position. And I think the main reason for that was because I like to come inside and be in like the pocket, or the number 10 position. Because I wasn't starting there, people didn't know how to mark you. So I would kind of like start on the left, and the fullback on the other team would be like, right, I've got him. I'd start wandering inside, and it'd be going like, what's he doing going in there? And like, I'm not going to go and tackle him in there. And so then I've got loads of space, and I'd become so effective then, and then kind of made that position, my favourite position then, and then tried to do the best I could in that position going forward.
And I guess one of the things that interests me about MK Dons is you were probably playing through the years as their first generation of young fans came through after the inception of the club. Did you feel a fan base building while you were playing there? Did you feel the support level increase, and what was it like at the start? Was it a bit strange? Because most of the people there were casual football fans rather than die-hard MK Don fans,
I think that's still the case a little bit.
Yeah.
So it hasn't really changed. So I was there for 6 years. I don't think that's enough time to really see the change. You got to think about the kids now. So they might have been kind of 10, 11, 12 when I first started playing, and they're going to be sort of in their 20s now. When they're having kids and they're taking their kids to the stadium, that's when you start to really see the kind of real hardcore supporter start to sort of go to the game. So they've still got obviously a very good fan base, but I think give it another 20 years, the club being in existence, and then you'll start to see that fan base really grow.
And as you were there for such a long time, I want to ask you about some of your favourite moments there as well, because you were involved in a couple of, Carl Robinson loved a cup run, to be honest, throughout his years at the club. And obviously you're involved in quite successful campaigns there as well. So talk to me about some of your favourite ones.
So I've probably got, just off the top of my head, I've got probably three moments. Am I right to say three? Is that
Yeah,
right?
that's fine.
The first one was probably the Man United game when we beat Man United in the cup 4-0.
Yeah.
And it was kind of that. I think it was that was the moment actually that Dele Alli was discovered.
Yeah.
You know, he just tore that midfield apart, and it was. And the thing is, they played, obviously they didn't play their full strength squad, but if you actually look at the team,
It's a strong team.
It was a strong team, and you know, we absolutely bopped them off the pitch. You know, at times. Don't get me wrong, they had some spells in the game, but you know, to beat a team 4-0 and you know suddenly kind of, I suppose, introduce yourself to the rest of the world, kind of in a way. It was a fantastic night. It was a little bit, actually, I was sitting on, because I started the game and came off. And when the fourth goal went in, I just looked at the rest of the team on the bench and just started laughing. You know, you couldn't do anything else. It almost get a bit embarrassing. But it was, hell of a night. And one that people still say it now, like when they say like, oh, I was there watching the game or watching it on telly and that. So yeah, that was a great night. I think the second one was AFC Wimbledon, the first meeting we had with AFC.
Yeah.
And with the history of the football club, it was a huge build up to the game, and we even had like a section of the stadium which was allocated for kind of neutral supporters. So people like Luton and other surrounding clubs could come to the game, but they were kind of supporting AFC because of obviously the history. And then it was just the way that game finished. You know, we went ahead with an incredible strike from Stephen Gleeson, and then they got their goal to be drawing, and it was just the last minute John at Simmerber flick into the top corner, and it was just pandemonium. It was just incredible because we you know, I remember talking to Dean Lewington after the game, and he said he hadn't slept for 3 days leading up to the game because he just said he knew the importance of the game from his kind of aspect. And he just said, because of the way it finished as well, it was just that relief of actually winning the game.
Yeah.
Kind of like, and we were so gracious with it as well. Like we felt we were so gracious, like in victory. But to be fair to them, they actually, apart from a few sort of people who sort of ended up smashing up seats and that, but as a football club, they were very good as well. So it kind of, I'm just glad that one got out of the way because it was the first ever. But yeah, that was an incredible day. And I think the last one was the day we got promoted. So we played Yeovil at home. We beat them quite comprehensively. Well, we were 4-0 up at half time. But we were waiting for a result elsewhere. Preston were playing Colchester, and Colchester needed to win to stay up. Preston needed to win to cement their second place, and Colchester won 1-0. But it was just the way it happened because we had won the game. Yeah. We were like listening to the crowd, and people were shouting things onto us. And at one point, someone said it's 3-0 Colchester, and I'm just like, oh, just calm down. And then eventually their game finished about 5 minutes before our game did. And it was just like we were like celebrating, like all the players were on the side of the pitch celebrating, and like we were still trying to play football, you know. And it was actually, I watched it back not so long ago, and it was the worst game of football in the second half because they didn't want to, they were relegated, they didn't want to press us, we didn't want to go forward, and we were just waiting on. Like it was a weird, strange game, but yeah, the highlight of my career so far.
When you have a moment like that, how do you know what to believe from the stands? Do you have any idea how to know what to trust and what not to?
No, because when I heard about the 3-0 one, it was Carl Baker had gone and got the ball to take a throw in, and he threw the ball on the pitch, ran past me, and was like, Colchester 3-0 up, like that, because he'd obviously gone and got the ball, and one of the fans was going 3-0 Colchester. So he started spreading the rumours on the pitch, and then next thing you know, like I've asked someone else, and they're like, no, it's still 0-0, and I was like, Jesus Christ, like, stop giving me this false hope. But I think it all worked out in the end because obviously we got promoted, and then Preston went up for the playoffs, so it kind of it all worked out in the end.
Absolutely. And then I guess we'll go back to an earlier point for your next move, which was Northampton. Now, is that one where I guess later in your career you're at the stage with settled down, you've got children? Are you thinking then, I've got to stay locally, I've got to stay in try and stay in my same house if possible, or does football come first when you're making those decisions?
I think if I was going to be brutally honest, there was so much going on outside of football that
Yeah,
I won't go into that I wanted to stay locally.
yeah,
So when Northampton came in and offered me a 2-year contract, and I was sort of 30 years old and thinking, a little bit of stability, and we sort of so I just decided, I want to stay as local as possible, and it just worked out perfectly for me. And when I sort of went in there at first, it was all about making sure that I was sort of we were local, and there was, like I said, there was stuff going on, and then once I got there and I started playing, I was like, actually, we've got a chance here. We've got a good squad, good players. You could tell that the players kind of had a bit of fire, and you're thinking this could actually go really well. And it just went the complete opposite, and kind of, and I just didn't. I really struggled that year because I got signed by, God rest him, Justin Edinburgh.
yeah.
And within a couple of games, I was out of the squad. And I remember knocking on his door and just saying, what's going on, kind of thing. You obviously know why I'm sort of coming in to speak to you. And he just literally just said, I just don't think you've been good enough. And I just kind of, when you just get a little bit of a slap in the face, I just thought, well, why did you sign me then, kind of thing. But I kind of really admired his honesty, just by telling me. And I thought, well, I've got obviously got my ideas up then. So within another couple of games, he got sacked, and then brought Jimmy Floyd in, and then it kind of all went pear shaped because he brought in another kind of 12, 13 players. We suddenly had a squad of like 36.
Yeah.
There were kind of 5, 6, 7 of us that had been completely bombed from even training. We had to go and train on our own, and then I kind of really started to lose that desire, that love of playing, because I'd gone from having a really good time at MK, and now I'm just training on my own.
Yeah.
What I couldn't really accept that, so that was difficult. And like I said, we spoke earlier about when I was younger, I wanted to be outside of my comfort zone. Whereas I got to that stage of my career, and I wanted to be somewhere where I knew I was loved, and I wanted to play and be local and enjoy the fans, and it just didn't quite work out.
And then I guess the last one as part of that was a loan move to Stevenage, another one local, of course. What was that spell like? Because looked good for the goal ratio, that one.
Yeah. 2 goals in 1 start. So I think, so when I was saying about I wasn't enjoying my time at Northampton, and it was the first time in my career where I kind of thought, do I really want to carry on doing this? And I still had loads of life in my legs, and I was still fit enough, but it was mentally, I was thinking, do I really want to do this? And then I thought, right, I'm not playing here, and throughout my career, if I wasn't playing, I'm going to go on loan. So I spoke to Darren Sile at Stevenage, and he said, come play for us till the end of the season. And I just thought, okay, let's go and give it a go. And the bit that changed massively for me was in training the first day. I got the ball about 35 yards out in like a practice game, and I passed the ball backwards into midfield, and he stopped the whole training session. And he walked over to me, and he basically said, because I was in a good pocket, loads of space, and I just played a safe pass backwards. And he went, I've not brought you in to do that. He goes, next time you get the ball in a position like that, I want you to shoot. I want you to nutmeg someone. I want you to flick it over the top. I want you to play a neat little ball inside. I want you to express yourself. Go and be the player that you want to be. Yeah. And then from that moment, it kind of gave that little spark in my belly again to go, actually, yeah, I do want to do this. And then that was it. I loved my time at Stevenage, and I was just so gutted when he got sacked, because before I turned up, the spell that he was having wasn't very good. But he really actually made me love the game again. So it kind of gave me that fire to try and give it a good go in my last year at Northampton.
Yeah, and I guess moving on to this season, obviously you moved to Stowmarket Town, which I think a few days ago you left, if I remember rightly.
Yeah.
But talk about the spell in the summer, because I presume that you probably would have had offers or interest from clubs higher up the pyramid. But again, was it looking for a local team and just staying in that sort of comfort zone, as you say, once you're settled down.
Yeah. So what's really interesting is, and this is, I'm so glad you asked, because when you see like when players move to clubs and you kind of think, why has he gone there? Like,
Yeah.
what's he doing that for? Like, he's much better than that. Or, or you start to get, you judge a book, then you buy its cover straight away. It's like, oh no, he shouldn't be doing that. So in the summer, I got released from Northampton and my son was born. And why I didn't want to talk about off the pitch stuff, we've been trying for a baby for many years.
Yeah.
And we had my son, and I said, I'm not playing football. I want to spend the first 3 or 4 months at home with my son. So I just completely shut down my career for my son. And I would never, ever get that time back. So I completely loved my time. But as time went on, my wife probably just wanted me out the door because she's probably getting like sick to death of me.
Yeah.
So she said, like, do you still want to play? And I was like, well, I'm still fit enough and I'm still good enough, And funny enough, a mate of mine plays for Stowmarket, and they had been sort of putting a bit of money into the club, and they wanted to sort of go up the leagues, and this was kind of the start of their climb. Would I go and play for them? And I just said, well, it needs to be worth my while, because obviously it's miles away. And they did. They made it worth my while, and I went down there, and was unbeaten whilst we were down there, and we was on for winning the treble and stuff like that, And I said to Haley, I was like, I just want to go somewhere where I'm just going to have a bit of fun, go and enjoy myself, win some games, and that's win some trophies, and that's it. And they gave me that opportunity, and it was just such a shame that it got cut short.
Yeah.
But it kind of done everything that I wanted it to do, because it kind of made me actually enjoy football again.
So, I mean, there's still a few snobs around on non-league football, but it can probably give any person who's lost a bit of love with the game their love back if they're in that situation. It's amazing at its best.
Yeah, it's incredible. I think it's more because when I went into that dressing room, I'd come from dressing rooms that were like professional footballers, so they moan about things, moan about the smallest of things, and I'm walking in there, and lads have come in from work, and they're so on a day of a game, like lads have been working day of a game, and do like grafting in the mornings and stuff like that, and I'm kind of sitting there going like, aren't you knackered? And they went, well, yeah, I'm a bit tired, but just get on with it, kind of thing. And that it kind of made me realise, like, actually, this is just the game of football. You are here just to kick a ball around and go and win some games and enjoy yourself. And that's what I've done. And if I can do that for wherever it may be for another year or two, because I still feel like I can do it. So just to enjoy it, I don't want to sort of leave a bit of taste in my mouth and finish my career where I just think, I can't be bothered anymore. It's just I want to actually go somewhere, have a bit of fun, have a laugh, and then sort of move on from there.
And I guess before we go on to the big question at the end, as you've had quite an illustrious career, we'll talk about some of your favourites. So I want to know the best player you played with and against in your career.
Best player I've played with will have to be Dele. Dele was, when he first came in. Actually, when he first came in, we didn't actually think too much of him, because he came along with like a couple of other lads who just seemed to be doing more than Del. And then he came back after a summer, and he just it was almost like a massive mentality shift. And I don't know who spoke to him or what was said, but he just went on leaps and bounds. And then he didn't just do that; he became like an incredible footballer, and someone that you couldn't get near, you couldn't touch. If you did have the ball and he came near you, he'd kick you, and he'd go through you and then run away from you. And it's kind of like, this kid is just exceptional. And that year we got promoted, it was pretty much, if you were to pick out one individual, it would have been him, and he helped us get promoted that year. And definitely Dele as a player to play with, and the best player to play against. And I've said this a few times now. I've spoken to a few people recently, but we played Chelsea in the FA Cup, I think it was. Can't think it was one of the cups, obviously, and they put out a really strong team.
Yeah.
And Eden Hazard played. Oh my God. Like, I've seen him on telly. I've never seen him live, but being on the same pitch as him, to see his ball control, his change of direction, his decision making, his strength, and almost like I'm playing against him, but I'm just sort of watching him, just thinking, wow, like you are just the best player I've ever seen and played against. So yeah, Eden Hazard.
They're not too bad names to be able to pick out there, to be fair. What about the best manager? You've listed a few that you've worked under and that you've spoken to in detail, but who would you say is the best or the most influential in your career?
Well, if you think about, I'll name a few of them first before I make my decision, but Joe Royle obviously gave me much chance. And I didn't appreciate Joe until I had other managers.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of a funny thing to say, but because I was young, he put so much kind of he'd shout and scream at me every day and put so much pressure. He put so much pressure on me on the pitch, but then off the pitch, he was brilliant. And I was thinking, like, he was like a Jekyll and Hyde character. Thinking, wow, like how? But I didn't really understand managers at the time. And when I look back, actually, he was one of the best managers I've ever come across. So he would be right up there. And I went down to Yeovil and like worked under Terry Skiverton, and Terry gave me a massive chance. Obviously, Carl under MK. You know, Northampton didn't go quite well. I had too many managers, and didn't really connect with them. But as a kind of a manager, as a whole, Carl Robinson at MK wasn't just good for me on the pitch, but off the pitch as well. And I think you look at now, like the manager to look at right this second is Jurgen Klopp, and Jurgen Klopp always goes on about knowing your players, getting to know your players and their families, and getting to know how they tick, and nothing about football, just everything else away from football. You need to get to know your players.
Yeah.
And Cole done that massively, and he got to know my now wife, and he got to know my family, and we'd be out for dinner, and he'd come over and he'd buy us a drink and stuff like that. And it was kind of like, this guy's got it like on the pitch and off the pitch, and that's why wherever he's gone, and at Oxford he was doing really well as well, and he's kind of he always seems to get the best out of his players. And so Cole for me was by far my best manager.
Fair enough. And I guess we'll move on to the final one, the big question, the name of the podcast. We ask every person for their favourite football games. I'll let you have two, because obviously you've been both a player and a fan, so you can give me one from each. What are your favourite footballing memories?
So as a player and a fan?
Yeah.
So as a player, I'll probably have to go with the AFC one, because I played the whole game, last minute winner. The stress of the game was just incredible. Like the buzz in the crowd at the end of the game, and it's not just about the game either. It's about what happens afterwards. Funny enough. And that was just, we partied all night. It was just incredible. And then as a fan, I watched Ipswich play when they got promoted to the Premier League at Wembley, and it was 4-2, wasn't it? They won. Yeah. And it was like almost 20 years ago. And I was only a kid at the time, and I was with my dad at Wembley, and we watched this game, and it was just like our half of Wembley was just like incredible. And I think it was at that point that I thought, I really want to be a professional footballer. So I can't really sort of say another game really, because that for me was just the pinnacle.
A fantastic way to end. Some brilliant games to pick, and we can't thank you enough for joining us and sharing your experience. It was really a pleasure to listen to.
Cheers, mate. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.